What's happening, Kate?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Let me shut this music off. There we go. We're live here on Fireside. It's your boy C-Roc on the What Are You Made Of show. We're also on YouTube, streaming live on YouTube. Thank you all for being here. For anybody that's watching right now or watching the replay, appreciate you. This is a show about the ingredients that have gone into making my guests who they are. We have Kate House in the building. What's going on, Kate?
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. It's a gorgeous Wednesday here in my small town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I get to hang out with you here, so it's a great day.
Gettysburg. Yeah, I grew up outside of Philly, so I'm familiar with Gettysburg. I've taken trips there, school trips, family trips, and all that, and it's a cool historical place for sure.
Yeah, it's really neat. I went to college here. I actually grew up outside of Philly in Bucks County, and then after college moved around for about a decade and then settled back in this little town.
Are you an Eagles fan?
I am.
Yes, good. We can get along fine. Yeah, Eagles fans are born that way. I don't know that a whole lot of people become Eagles fans that aren't born that way. So,
Right, exactly. I think my dad would disown me if I weren't.
well, Kate, look, this is how we start the show. I'm going to give a little bit of background to who you are here, and then I'm going to ask you the question, what are you made of? So you got a few seconds here to think about that, and then we'll just converse on, the ingredients that have gone into making you who you are, what you're doing right now, why you're doing it right now, and the impact that you're working on having. So let me give you guys a little rundown on who Kate is. By day, you can find her running around her small town, as she mentioned, in Gettysburg, PA, with 2 little boys as a stay-at-home mom and wife to her college sweetheart. And by night, she's the host of, this sounds like, that just sound dirty, I'm sorry. But you wrote it, I didn't write this. By night, she goes out on the town. No, I'm just kidding. She's the host of the Live by Design podcast, also known LBD. If you hear LBD, that means Live by Design, folks. She's a health coach, educator, meditation enthusiast, slow but steady runner, and creator of her women-focused personal growth group, the LBD Collective. Her purpose is to help others release personal growth, overwhelm, get unstuck, and finally take the action to launch you in the direction of your dreams. She is all about design, which sounds like by intention to me, and not by default by someone else's intention. Right, Kate?
Yes, that's 100% it. I am all about living by design and not by default is the name of the game over here.
Well, listen, so let's get this show started right. And I talk about that stuff all the time, by the way. I want these red flowers in the background. There we go. They're just prettier. So I talk about intention all the time, and we're going to get into this and dive into it. But before we do that, I got to know, what are you made of?
Oh, I love this question. Immediately, the word gumption comes to mind for me. I think I was just born with extra amounts of gumption, or I've learned how to tap into it and try new things. And as a recovering perfectionist, I've learned that gumption is really the way that I just kind of pluck up the courage to try something new and show up imperfectly and just keep doing it over and over again.
No, I was thinking about this the other day because sometimes I get into this mode. I don't need to be perfect, but I get into this mode where nothing's ever enough. And I'm not talking about other people doing things for me. I'm talking about from me, my point of view, like it's not enough. Like I could do more. The money's not where I want it to be. I got to do more. And it's like, when do you stop? And also, like, I think about this sometimes too, is like, when do we appreciate what we've accomplished and take some time to be like, I'm imperfectly perfect. Like, yeah. Let's take some time to enjoy that, right? So as you married your college sweetheart. Marriage, how long have you been married, by the way?
Oh, it's been over 10 years now.
10 years, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's not always perfect in relationship either. Then you have kids and you add kids to the mix. Then you got that relationship with our spouses, because I've been married over 20 years, by the way. We got that relationship. Thank you. And then you add kids in the mix who have demands and needs and everything else. And then something has to be given, like given up, sacrificed or something. And a lot of times it's the husbands for the mommy duties. And so how do you navigating that currently? How have you navigated that? Because I know this is an important thing for a lot of folks out there that have kids and they're having relationships and they want great marriages.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that has been really pivotal for us, and this is going to sound like such a simple thing, but my husband and I started this gratitude practice together funnily enough, we started it just a few months before the pandemic started. So before we were home all the time with each other with like a 10-month-old and a 2-year old, it was wild times. And prior to that, though, we had started this gratitude practice. And for me, I think finding that contentment in the day to day, like you were alluding to earlier, a lot of that for me comes from gratitude. And so it first started as us just sharing with one another one thing we were grateful for from that day when we went to bed. And then we realized we wanted to acknowledge the other person and share something else. And so it eventually evolved into, it starts off as saying like, today I'm grateful to you for, and it's a way of just acknowledging your partner, and the big and little things that they do to love you, to love your kids, to support your family, whatever that looks like. And then the second thing we say is we call it our general. It's just something we're generally grateful for, i.e., not related to our partner, right? And that, it sounds like such a small thing, but we've been doing it for years now. So we've literally done it like over 1,000 times. And the feeling so seen and appreciated by your spouse, by your partner is really powerful. And, I'm a huge fan of date nights. I'm a huge fan of like going on vacation together, carving out that special time to be together. But really, it's those couple of minutes we take at the end of each night that I really attribute to the fact that we're so close, and we always call ourselves Team House. And we really approach life, as a team.
Can I ask you a question, and if you be honest with me about something?
Yeah.
My wife tells me that I'm very attractive. There's nothing more than attractive to her than me doing dishes and laundry. Is that really true, or is she just lying to me to get me to do them?
No, it's absolutely true. And then if you also cook, like my husband does most of the cooking in our house, and I'm always like, you are never more attractive than when you're cooking or you're helping with a DIY project.
Yeah, that's great, man. All right, so take us back. You grew up outside of Philly, Bucks County. I'm familiar with the area and all that. Um, what things did you go through in life that have kind of shaped you into today? Whether there was some, you know, setbacks, good things. What were the catalysts for you to be who you are today?
Yeah, I love this question. So, for me, my catalyst is really my little brother. His name is David, and he's 18 months younger than me, or he was. He passed away recently. And when we were kids, David just showed up with so much joy in his life, despite the fact that he was born without the ability to speak as a type 1 diabetic on the autism spectrum. My mom taught him sign language as a way to learn to communicate, and eventually he was able to learn the words to be able to speak. And so I had this person in my life who he just showed up with such joy every day. And he had to work so hard to just do things that so many of us might take for granted. And so seeing him and going through all these different, I would go with them to PT appointments and OT and, all the things. And from a very young age, I realized what a gift it was to be born into the body I was born into with the abilities that I have. And I never wanted to take it for granted. One of my earliest memories is seeing my brother have a seizure. And that really stuck with me as a young child, realizing so early on that, our health isn't something that we get to take for granted, right? Our life isn't something that we can take for granted. And so this kind of ethos of living by design and not by default is something has always just kind of been a part of me. It's always been something that's been a through line in my life. And so, David was that example for me for a long time. But then, the expectations and the shoulds and cultural conditioning, all the things, right? So I go to college, had a great college time, like career. I was the first of my friends to get a job. I started working. I had incredible colleagues. But I woke up one day at 25, and I jokingly say I had a quarter life crisis right on time. Like I just turned 25, and I realized I just wasn't lit up for the work that I was doing. And I was like, you know what? I spend so much of my day in this office on this computer. And the whole time I had this calling on my heart, like there was something else for me out there. Not that there was anything wrong with where I was. It just wasn't right for me. And I had kind of checked all the boxes, right? School, relationship, career. And I felt unfulfilled. I felt like I wasn't really following my own personal sense of purpose. And so I had this moment where I remember sitting on the couch, and we lived in the Chicago suburbs at the time with my husband, and I was crying because I was really stressed, and I just had this inner conflict going on. And I remember him saying, I wish I could make this better for you. And that was kind of my, like, not everybody gets to have a light bulb moment, but I did. I was like, oh, nothing changes if nothing changes. Like, I have the agency to change this. And I realized in that moment too, if I'm not changing it, I'm actually choosing it. And I was like, I don't want to choose this anymore. I want to follow that calling on my heart. And so I became a yoga instructor. I became a health coach. I became a podcaster. And this whole time, I encourage myself to just take the next right step, not to think like, what do I want to be doing in 30 years? That's a great exercise. But for me, that's a little overwhelming. And so I'm like, what is the next right step? How do I want to feel? How do I want to show up in my life? How do I want to love and support others well? And what is the next right step? So that's a very long-winded answer to how I kind of, where I started and how I got to where I am.
Nothing wrong with that. I keep going on mute because I'm sitting out here and some of these bugs. I've been talking about these on these shows. They're my co-hosts. These bugs.
I love
Last week's shows. You know when it's nice out. I don't like to be in the studio. I like to be out here, and these little guys like to chime in when they shouldn't. So,
They just want, they want to share the mic.
yeah. So, have you ever thought about writing a book, or have you written a book?
That's a great question. I haven't, but it's on my kind of my 12 to 18 month goals, is to sit down and write a book. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Because I did, and it's it's quite a journey. Not saying I'll ever write another one anytime soon, but it was definitely quite a journey. Gives you stuff to talk about. There's so much power in it, but the podcast is very powerful. And you got your own show. By the way, how many episodes are you up to now?
Oh man, I think tomorrow drops episode 262.
Yeah. So you're seasoned, right?
Yeah.
And one, I want to ask you this question about it, and then we'll get to the going on shows as another thing. But what is being a podcast host and having a show over 250 episodes now? What has it done for you?
Oh, I love this question. Well, the first thing it did for me was it just kept me accountable to my own personal growth journey and to my own dedication to being a work in progress. Never being content, but also being committed to continuing to learn, continuing to grow. I used to joke as a kid, like people are like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, a student? I don't want to, I just want to be a student. I just want to learn forever. And for me as a podcast host, that's an opportunity for me to continue learning, to continue, doing the deep dives into the content that I want to share, practicing it in my own life and sharing what works well, and sometimes more importantly, what doesn't. So that's been the first benefit. The second benefit is the community, the listeners, the women who tune and the men who tune into the show and share their stories with me, who are vulnerable and real and support one another so beautifully. But the third thing that I didn't really anticipate when I started the podcast, I started the podcast in the beginning of the pandemic, mostly as a passion project. At that time, my boys were really little. They're only 18 months apart, so they were very little. And I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, and I just felt like I needed something in my day outside of being mom. I just needed something for myself. And so the podcast started as a passion project, again, to lean into that learning, to connect with other women at a time when, we were very much in our home all the time. And so that's where it started. But then the coolest thing happened, now being 3 years in, connecting with other podcast hosts and their coaches, their TEDx speakers, their doctors, people like you, right? Just people who are out there encouraging, inspiring, educating other people, and getting to learn from them has been the coolest, most unanticipated part of becoming a podcaster. Because at first all my episodes were solo shows. I didn't think about, talking. I was like, talk to someone else. That sounds terrifying. And now it's like one of my favorite parts.
Yeah. So that part, I feel like sometimes in this world that we're in like that, where we get to talk to all these folks that kind of think alike, most of us, right? It feels like we're designing our own universe and we're this, but like outside of that, it's like people really think that way. Like people are really, it's like we're so accustomed to this community of podcasters that it actually like kind of makes you think like you need to step outside sometimes to make sure you're still in touch with everybody else's situation. Not necessarily you want to be involved with toxicity, but you need to understand that it's there still. So yeah, I love that you said that. How about your business and doing what you're doing business wise? How's podcast?
Yeah, so podcasting acts as the number one way that I communicate with people. So you can, the cool thing about podcasts, right, is they're free to listen to. So especially the women I talk to specifically, they're busy. They're incredibly dedicated to their careers or their motherhood journey or their education or all of the above, right? And they like to take their learning on the go. And that's why I love podcasting, right? You can pop in an earbud and fold that never ending pile of laundry, or you can pop in an earbud while you're working out. It's something that it can just be layered into your life so beautifully. And so for me, podcasting serves as this way of reaching the largest number of women, and then giving them opportunities to then come more into my community, whether that's the Facebook group, the email list, a course, my coaching programs. But podcasting's so cool because you'll have people tune in for years before they ever take that step to join you on a call or to really connect with you one-on-one. And I think podcasting, having someone in your earbud is so personal, so humanizing. And so it's a way to connect with people on this really personal level.
And have you like come into this phase with podcasting where you thought about this and designed it this way, or is there some things that came that you didn't expect?
Yeah, so it's been an evolution. So I started as a passion project and was like, I guess I should like create a website and have an email list, right? And so it was very, I've bootstrapped the whole thing, and now I can like do HTML and all this. You learn as you go, right? Like imperfect action beats perfect inaction every time. It's like that's not for me. That's from Ed Milet, and that's been my ethos this whole time. So it was like I built my first website on WordPress, and then eventually I moved it over to Show It, and now it's gorgeous, right? But it didn't start out like that, right? You just got to start. And so then the next transition was, oh, this is no longer a passion project. I really want to make this part of the business. And then it was like, oh, okay, then I need systems. Then I need to be intentional, right? I'm like the intentional person. And so I had to start wearing the business hat, which was kind of new to me. But it's been a cool journey of learning, experimenting, failing sometimes, and like I like to just say it's all failing forward, right? Like I'm learning something every time.
And have you incorporated going on shows besides today on this one? Have you incorporated going on shows consistently?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I try to guest on shows at least once a week.
Good.
So I publish 10 months out of 12. And every week on my show, I do a solo episode and I do a conversation with somebody. And my approach is when I have conversations with folks is to find some sort of way that it can be reciprocated. So they host me on their show, or we do something like this live together, or we go live on Instagram. But yeah, I've guested on over, I think, 60 shows at this point, and that's been a huge way of growing my community, connecting with awesome people.
Yeah, I love that. So what I did too is before I had my show, I used to go on people's shows. Some guy begged me to come on a show. He probably doesn't like me saying that, but he did. And because I didn't even know what a podcast was, right? I was just trying to, I was trying to get known at the time and try to build a brand, but I didn't understand podcasting. I eventually went on and I loved it. And I started going on. I realized like this is powerful. So I started doing the same thing. I was going on as many shows as I could organically, podcast swapping, we call it, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
eventually I started to realize like I need more intention, more by design bookings. And so I hired somebody to take care of it, like, hey, do what you do, right? And all of a sudden it up leveled. It's like there's levels to this game, right? Well, that first one is podcast swaps. But then the next level is like, hey, here's what I want to do. Here's my vision. Go after it and go get me an aligned podcast, and then up level the shows as well. And those networks start to grow, and those people that you start to meet. Not that there's anything wrong with newbies and beginners, but there's a totally different quality of skill and network to that next level. So I love that you talked about that, and I love that you've been on 60 shows. I always say people need to go on at least one a week.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that. So all right, so now as we go forward here, what is the like the vision, the design that you have right now? Like if I were to snap my fingers and you can have everything that you intentionally have designed, what does that look like?
Oh, I love this question. So I'm really in this phase now of growth, of really purposely scaling my business, my podcast, the amount of impact I can have in the world and in the lives of these women. And my big dream, like if I were to snap my fingers and, my 5-year goals have come to fruition, I want to pay off our home mortgage and just be mortgage free. I would love to retire my husband. He works for the federal government and has ever since college. And honestly, he would be a much better stay-at-home parent than I am. And so we would love for him to just really spearhead our household and all of that good stuff. And then in terms of my business, I just want to encourage as many women as possible to claim that agency in their lives, to live by design and not by default. And just to know that life doesn't have to just happen to them. They can live joyfully in the day to day while still making progress, small, sustainable progress in the direction of their dreams and their goals.
I love it. Well, look, I used to want to pay my house off too. Then I started thinking to myself, what if and I'm just throwing this out there to you because I don't know if you've thought about this or not, but what if I were to do that, but then also then take that equity, buy something that has multi-units, get the people to rent and pay the bill, pay the mortgage. My house is only leveraged because I have another asset that's worth something, and then have those people pay the mortgage there. And I have this asset building. I have my asset here. Yes, I have debt, but it's being paid for by someone else. Because I thought to myself before, like I was like, yeah, if I could pay this house off 15, say I got a 15-year mortgage when rates are really low, and I'm like, 15 years, I'll be paid off. Then I started, well, what is that going to save me? That's going to save me an X amount per month, but I'm not going to be building assets after that. So I started thinking to myself and learning more about real estate investing. So something to think about, take some time, and you and your husband, like check into some of that stuff, because while you're doing this payoff thing, you could start to think about, okay, what are we going to do when we get there? And I just want to see people be as wealthy as they possibly can with the potential that, that's out there. So Kate, so I love your vision. I love you wanting to put your husband in the house. I love that. I told my wife,
please retire me.
yeah. Some men have a problem with that. I love, my wife's a real estate agent. I love when she makes money. It doesn't hurt my ego. If she made more money than me, I'm good. Right? She can even put me on an allowance. I don't even care. I'm not that kind of guy. Like, I'm not going to get my ego hurt because my wife makes more money than me. I'll have a sugar mama. You know what I mean? I'm good with that. So anyway, so then going forward, like what kind of, when you're working with your clients right now, what are your offerings? Like, how can people work with you? Is it like a one-on-one thing? Do you have group coaching? You have masterminds? I know you said something about a Facebook group. Like, what are the offerings that you have?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great question. So I have a suite of offerings, and something I'd love to gift to everyone who's tuning in is my Pursue Your Purpose Masterclass. So if you just use C-ROC, so C-Roc, as your coupon code, you can get that for free. It's a $97 value. So that's the initial part of my offer suite, is this digital course, because the women I work with, it's so interesting because even with my one-on-one clients, we always choose 3 words that exemplify how they want to feel when they're done with our coaching program together. And purposeful and connecting with their own personal sense of purpose has been this through line for so many women. And so that's why I created the Pursue Your Purpose Masterclass. It's for those of us who can't afford yet to join a group coaching program, to have a one-on-one mindset coach. And it's a digital course, so you get to take it at your own pace. There's this beautiful workbook that goes along with it and just helps you kind of get unstuck from where you are right now if you're feeling like something's not quite in alignment. And it just gets you moving forward. Not perfectly, we're not going to plan it out to the nth degree. We're going to take action and figure out what is right. So that's the first thing that I do. The thing that I love, like one of my favorite things that I do, is hosting the LBD Collective, which is a group coaching program. So we meet twice a month. The first time we meet during the month is for a live coaching call, and I always teach during that call. We call it Growth Night. So it's the time that we grow together, and we dive into topics like self-care, gratitude, just like holistic health and wellness, right? We talk about all of these things, all these little pieces of the puzzle that relate to living with intention. And we take a deep dive every month. And then the second time we meet that month is for a journaling session. So I create prompts that allow us to really reflect on what we've learned and then take the time to really implement it in your own life. Because sometimes that's what's missing, right? We learn. If you're tuning into something like this, you're probably one of us, right? You love to learn new things, but we can kind of overwhelm ourselves if we don't then take the time to reflect and implement and to choose what pieces of what we learned we want to implement and the pieces that we're like, thank you, but no thank you, right? So that's in the LBD Collective. And then I work one-on-one with women as well, and men, but mostly women, as a mindset and an empowerment coach, really just to give you permission to make yourself a priority, to put yourself on your calendar, to not break promises you make to yourself, and to help you feel vivacious again. So many of us, we get kind of beat down from the day-to-day grind. And I believe that there are ways that we can build moments into our day that give us joy, moments that we feel gratitude for, as we continue to make progress going forward. So yeah, those are all the different ways. And then of course the Live by Design podcast is out there too.
And by the way, Kate, what was the website that they could put the C-ROC coupon code in? What's the
Oh,
website?
thank you. Yeah, so it's over at my website, Miss Kate House. So MS and then Kate House, just like a house.com. And then the masterclass is just /purpose, and you can find it there.
So now go get it, go check it out, guys. You might as well. It's free access to figuring out your purpose. But like what like I don't want to go on the whole thing, but like what is like the first step to finding something that lights you up? Like your purpose.
Yeah. The first thing that I take folks through is, well, first a gratitude practice, of course. And really it's a self-gratitude practice, being grateful to yourself for having the curiosity to do this, taking the time to do it. But then the next thing that we start with are core values. So if everything's a priority, nothing is a priority, right? So core values, you can Google, there's a great list over on James Clear's website, and they're all great, but you can't choose all of them. I like to say, 3 to 6 core values. And you can use these core values in your decision-making process. So often I feel like we get decision fatigue, right? We're having to make decisions. Do I want to pursue this graduate degree, or do I want to move to this town? Do I want to change jobs, right? If we have our core values set, then we have this lens through which we can filter these decisions that we make. So if one of your core values is adventure, as it is for my husband, then you're going to prioritize your time. Maybe once a year you go on a big hiking adventure, right? Or you do this big camping trip, or you find ways to incorporate it into your weekend so it's more a fabric of your daily life, right? So just getting clear on those core values. Is it relationships? Is it family? Is it leadership? And once you have those established, it really just helps kind of guide you going forward. And then if you ever do feel stuck and you're like, I don't know what the right decision is or what to do, then you can go back to those core values and be like, okay, which of these decisions feels most in alignment with these values? And always knowing that your values might shift over time too, and that's okay.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because chaos and confusion stems from not being in control of your core values, understanding decisions. And, when there's chaos and confusion, it's hard to be successful. And the core values, what you're just talking about, clear it up. Gives you binary decisions, like you just said. I love that. That's why I talk about this all the time. One thing I was thinking about, like when you're working with people, as we're winding down, I got 2 more questions. As you're working with people, do you notice that some people don't know the right questions to ask, or don't know what questions to ask you as a coach?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I find that the thing that they come to me for initially is the surface level, and what we end up working on is usually deeper. So if the desire is, I want to feel more like, I want to feel healthier in my body, I want to feel confident and strong and energized. A lot of times it's something deeper, right? We're going to talk about self-love. We're going to talk about the way you talk to yourself in your head, because sometimes we can be so hard on ourselves. Maybe it's perfectionism, maybe it's all or nothing thinking. A lot of times it has to do with our mindset, whether we're in a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And so that's what I find is like there's this initial thing that folks come to you for, but it's actually something maybe a little bit deeper, that can then impact multiple areas of their life. That whole like a rising tide lifts all ships. So like your health is going to improve, but other areas will as well.
Love it. Here comes this big bug. I can't control him. He just gets loud sometimes. So what is the biggest challenge in your business that, like, because we all face it and we all feel like sometimes we're alone in it, right? But what's the biggest challenge in your business right now that, like, not keeps you up at night, but when you first wake up in the morning, it's like the first thing that comes to mind. You'd love to solve it. If you could put it off on somebody else, that would be great. What is that thing for you?
Oh man, I'd say email. I just don't love emails. And so I've started using like video responses. So I don't have to, like, I don't know what it is, but I just have this like tension around like sitting down and just cranking through all the messages. So I have a VA who helps me a couple hours each week, and as much as possible, I'm like, can you respond to this? Can you respond to this? I'd so much rather chat in person.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that because that's kind of a low leverage task, and definitely, getting rid of low leverage tasks in your business should be the first step. That's the first person you should hire for. And, so there's nothing wrong with that. I feel you. How about beyond that though? Like what's a bigger problem? Like that's a low thing, but like what's a bigger thing? Help me.
Yeah, I say the biggest thing I'm focusing on right now is just increasing my reach. So I host summits now. I'm hosting my second summit in October called the Empowered Self Summit. And they're free to tune into, and I host them via a private podcast feed. And so I've been using those, going back to when you talked about connecting with other podcasters and creating that network. I'm very purposeful now with the folks who come on my show with the intention that, they could be a great summit guest in the future. And the summit brings in people, from this person's network and this person's audience and this person's community, and brings them all into one place. And they all join my email list, which is always a great plus to get people in your own little corner of the world, that internet corner that is all yours, right? That you own. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm working on right now, or like the biggest, I don't even want to say pain point, just like it would feel so abundant to just keep growing that impact, and that just comes down to reaching more and more people.
Thank you for sharing that. Guys, listen, it's all about living by design. I always talk about this. If you don't set the intention of what you want in your life, you're going to live somebody else's life. There's a thing called, I want to say it's a life continuum. You're continuing someone else's life. It could be your parents. It could be your family. It could be friends. They tell you what their opinion, and then you go start living your life based on that. They got a string on you. And so I love the talk today. Kate, you're awesome. Keep going. I see big things for you. You just have, as you're going, you're going to just keep evolving even bigger and bigger and bigger. And you should become a household name because I love the vibe that you carry. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Awesome, Kate. Well, look, I'm going to do a follow-up call right after this if you have 2 minutes. So I want to thank you for joining us. And thank you all for watching the replay, listening. If you're listening on YouTube, watching on whatever, make sure you comment, subscribe, and leave that little thumbs up thing on YouTube because we want to hear from you and we want to provide you some great guests, great content.